Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Angie.
And together, we are Twinfinity.
We are twin flames in union, sharing our journey, and this is now video number 23, and it's called The Blessings of Soulmates and Karmic Partners.
Okay, first of all, where we are in another just little corner of our living room. We've been here a couple of times before, but today we have one of Angie's favorite pictures
Yes.
behind us. You'll be able to see it. There's just a ghosted angel in the background going through the rainbow. It's a real pretty picture.
And mountains. There's mountains in there, which we love our mountains.
Yeah, I can see mountains. Not like I couldn't look over my shoulder and see them, but...
And since we can't be outside today because it's really snowful out there.
It is snowy and cold again. Never seen a spring like this in Calgary. Well, maybe because we haven't seen spring yet. It is still an extension of winter. Spring's supposed to arrive in the next 2 or 3 days, but then we have snow in the forecast for the end of next week again. It's just the way it is. I'm sure that what we are getting is spreading across the continent, and everybody else is just a couple of days behind us.
So we figured if we can't be out in nature, we'll try and bring a bit of nature to you guys. And I don't know if you can read the picture, but it says, "Trust that you are not alone." And I thought it fit kind of well with our story today. So,
our story today is a little bit of an experiment. We have come to a portion of our story where our first meeting is now breaking up. And therefore, we're coming to a span in our lives where over 12 years, we didn't have a whole lot of contact. So the next 2 or 3 videos, starting with this one, is not going to be chronological, but it's going to be based upon topics through the 12 years. So Angie's going to get started, and depending upon how things go, it might be mostly Angie this video, or maybe I'll have a chance to tack a few minutes in on the end myself. But
hopefully we'll do both.
As per normal, she has not rehearsed with what she's going to be saying with me, so I'll be hearing this, well, for the first time, and then you folks shortly after, just like me.
And before we do that, should we do our recap?
Oh yeah, recap.
Okay.
Last time, yes, Angie feels a huge void in her life, like she doesn't even fit in or belong on Earth.
Yeah.
Though Angie and I were still seeing each other every couple of weeks, there was still a huge disconnect between us, even though we still loved each other. I got to meet Angie's friend, Tanya, and she told Angie and I that we are twin souls. Very interesting. First time we heard anything like that. And Angie and I started distancing ourselves from each other, and more, even though there was still love between us. We were on very different paths and in very different worlds.
Yes, we were. And getting further. So where I'm starting is now February 18th of 99, and we're going to cover in this video all the way up to probably 2007, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there.
Depending upon how it goes.
Yeah.
You're in charge of the first many minutes.
So yeah, like Rob said, this is all, we're going to do a huge jump in time. We're going to cover the same time period in 2 different videos. This one's going to be all about the other people we connected with while we were in separation, and the next one will be about how we reconnected with each other over the years when we weren't dating other people. We thought it was important to talk about soulmates and karmic partners because so many people are like, I don't want to date anybody else. I have this great love. I don't want anybody else. And I get that. You're going to hear in our story in a minute that it was hard for me too. But there's so many gifts, at least for us. Everybody's path is different. We're not saying go race out and date other people. If it doesn't resonate, it's not for you. But for us, it was a huge benefit to our lives.
Also, there's 2 sides to the story on this. There's not only does the individual not want to go out and experience life with other people, it's also, what about their twin flame? They're very terrified that the twin flame is going to be meeting other people and dating and possibly getting married or having long-term living together relationships. Yes, this video, if we both get it put together, will cover what happened with us and our karmic partners, and also karmic friends a little bit too, and why those relationships for us were actually very important that they happened, as opposed to being very terrifying that they happened.
Yes. So on that note, in my journal, this was shortly after the recap that Rob shared, I wrote, Rob called and dropped another bomb. He needs to distance himself again. Blah, blah. In other words, I'm like, yeah, here we go again. We've been through this before. He says he needs to stop keeping me for a night, even though it's always his idea to keep me. He needs to listen to his mind and not his heart. I told him I was not impressed, that I can't keep doing this, being pulled closer and then pushed away. Sound familiar?
It's been push-pull for a couple of years in this story already.
I said I also told him that I'm not happy that he's the one who said last week when I felt him pull away that he'd still keep me for a night. 1 minute it's one thing and the next minute it's another. I told him my heart can't handle this. Close, distant, close, distant. I was honest in that I feel more angry than hurt and sad. So I was like, I'm so done with this. Like, make up your mind, buddy.
Well, also, my head and my heart were also in a big tug of war, too. I knew it was wrong for us to be together, but it felt so good for us to be together. And any time that I would push her away, all of a sudden my heart and my soul would just ache. So sometimes it was easier just to have her around, even though it didn't seem like our relationship could go anywhere. So it was a huge tug of war within inside of me.
Yeah, head and soul. So I said, I very much understand that the head and heart thing in his actions, but it doesn't mean I like it, accept it, or I'm happy with it. I'm frustrated. So back to square one for the 50 millionth time, I wrote in my journal. I said, the fact is, no matter how hard we try, we seem not to be able to leave each other's lives, and we can't stay just friends. There's too much between us. So I was just so sick of this drama, this dynamic, just had enough. I'm still at that crazy journal with the weird pages, so now I'm trying to read my notes again. Turn journal, okay. I'm sick of the distance and avoidance from him. Then as soon as I accept he needs space and leave him alone, he comes running back. Again, sound familiar? I know a lot of people are frustrated with that. I read in the groups. People are like, why does it? The minute I let my twin flame go, he comes back.
I'm sure I was a terrible example of that. I could imagine that I did the push-pull thing. I'm sure I did it.
We both did.
20, 30, 40 times. I could see that being part of my style.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm sure that was rough.
It was. In fact, I told him it's very hard to feel the love or to let the love subside and die down, only to have him walk back into my life and pull my heartstrings again. We've played that game for a year now, which is a year too long for me. So I was just like, okay, whatever, I'm sick of this. Let's just move on. All right, April 2nd, 1999. Talked with Rob last night, talked about us and the fact that it's over, and about us getting over the fact that it's over. We agreed that we're both being distanced just to come to terms with things. So we're finally like, okay, we have to somehow figure out how to move on from each other. And the only way we knew how was just not speak. Even though we wanted to still have a connection as friends, we just couldn't do that.
It was too hard.
It was. It was way too hard.
For both of us.
Yeah. So as this is going on, I'm still at 7-Eleven, and if you remember from our last video, I had mentioned I ended up meeting one of my customers there. He was a regular. He was in every day, twice a day. So he finally asks me out on a date, and because of the whole Rob thing, I was like, fine. Like, I wasn't interested in him, I'll be honest. We were just very different people, but I was like, well, sure, I'll just go have some fun. So here's what I wrote about that. I said, one of our regular customers asked me out. Not someone I could see myself dating seriously. Big guy, smoker, rough, tough kind of man. He gave me his phone number and I'll call. Why not? Have some fun, get a date or two. In other words, I'm like, well, you know, got nothing to lose. At least maybe it'll help me move on from Rob. So then I said, okay, I'm nervous. I've got my date at 7 p.m. I've never been on a date, which I wasn't. I'd never really been on a date because our first date wasn't a date. We weren't planning it as a date. So it was kind of scary to 25 years old and go on my first date. So I said, I feel like I'm betraying Rob. He's the only one I've been with in the last nearly 2 years. So again, I know a lot of people are struggling with that. They're like, I can't see anybody else, even if I'm in separation with my twin, because I feel like I'm betraying them. I felt the same. I understand. I said, I'm dating now. My God, I really am normal. My first ever real date, and I'm 25. This guy, Wade, seems not my type at all. Not sure why I agreed. It'll be an experience, I guess. Then I wrote, well, back from my date. It was okay, but I gotta say one thing. I think it'll take some time to find someone that can do better than Rob. So here I am already comparing other men to Rob.
Oh, poor them.
So it began for the next 12 plus years.
I didn't ask to be a benchmark, but apparently I was.
Twin Flame's always a benchmark and nobody ever measures up.
Oh.
So I said I might as well just admit I'm still in love with Rob. It sucks going out with other men and missing Rob. Mind you, I'm not the least bit attracted to this guy, just not my type. Makes me appreciate what I had with Rob. Was that the whole point of the date? Why I said yes when I didn't feel like it was even my words? So I'd come to realize what I have with Rob? Not sure, but I sure miss him. So that was one of the two purposes of 7-Eleven. The first one was meeting Wade, who, again, eventually I did marry, which we'll get to later in the story.
Yeah, he's the motorcycle dude,
yes,
isn't he?
Complete opposite to me. Very big, burly guy, smoker, drinker. Not my type at all.
This is almost impossible for me to even imagine, but it happened.
It really did. And we'll get to why it happened in a bit. But the other point of the 7-Eleven job was to break more templates about the Miss Goody Two-Shoes life. I was fired from 7-Eleven, the only job I've ever been fired from. I don't get fired from jobs. I excel at jobs. But I got fired.
You know, you should try management sometime. Like myself in my management career, I've quit a few of my jobs. I've been fired from a few of my jobs. And what I do for a living, it's very much a mantra of very much being like a hockey coach. You know, you're hired to be fired. You know, you have your time and then you're gone. And you start someplace else and they love you and then you have your time and then you're gone. So I'm kind of a little bit used to being fired after having a year or two of glory, and then I go someplace else. Yeah, it is traumatizing being fired.
Yes, it is.
Especially the first time.
Yeah. It was the only time. I've never been fired since. Oh my God. I'm usually begged to stay and work more because being the goody two-shoes type, I'm always the one to do the extra work. So yeah, my bad attitude and other things got me fired. So not only was I evicted from the first apartment I ever lived in, I was fired from the first job I ever had. Way to break the goody two-shoes mold.
She's more of a goody two-shoes. Honest. There's just people go through rough times in life. Sometimes when whether you're out of character or developing a new character, or just working your way through a rough patch, bad things happen to people who otherwise, in the eyes of society, are good people. Everyone goes through rough patches.
Well, and I wasn't in a good frame of mind. I mean, I was dating somebody that I didn't at all resonate with, and I hated my job, so I was just not me. But anyway, we'll continue. So this is now April 26th, and I said, Rob called, talked with him for a while. So here we are.
I did again?
Each other. Yeah.
Okay.
I said, it's interesting that he called because I've been thinking of him all night. Of course I was. You know, I'm dating somebody else, so why is Rob still on my mind?
You're supposed to be sleeping all night. Yeah, okay.
So I said, he's sort of back with Karmic 1. Remember her? She's been in a lot of our videos.
Karmic 1.
Yeah. So him and I discussed our situations, how similar they are, both seeing someone we are not attracted to. So yeah, we're both kind of dating somebody just to date somebody because we're trying to get over each other and think, okay, if we're with somebody else, hopefully that will help. Did it really? Not so much. Oh well. So I said, in my opinion, just another learning step for us to get back together. Tanya says we are so meant to be. So I'm still thinking Rob and I have a future, and I'm thinking, okay, we just need time apart and we'll get back together. So I'm just thinking this Wade guy is just a little play buddy, practice, date, I don't know what. I'm just
play buddy. Play buddy.
That's probably a bad word.
Play buddy.
Okay.
After the video, I got to get a definition of play buddy. She's turning red.
Okay, I'm going to just keep reading.
Time for more journals.
Yeah. Now, by the way, I'm going through 7 different journals because we're going through a huge span of time. So I'm now into September of 99. So
can I throw in a comment here?
Make it quick.
1999, the summer of 1999 was actually a very influential year on me. Up until then, when summertime came, I was completely focused on climbing mountains.
Yes, you were.
Scrambling and hiking and anything to do in the mountains with boots on, going someplace, backpack, every weekend if I could, unless it was bad weather. In 1999, in the summer of 1999, along with a friend of mine, I got starting into kayaking. And this is whitewater kayaking, not lake kayaking. So on rivers, sometimes on small rivers, getting turned upside down, bouncing off boulders, that kind of stuff. And that whole change of activity was to change how I was learning things. You learn things different when you're spending a lot more time on water as opposed to on land. You may remember from many videos ago, I was involved in jet boat racing, and I learned a lot about the fluidity of life and spirituality and the earth itself from water. Now I was getting back involved in water again, so I was renewing an old perspective after having it be on the shelf for a long time. And it felt bad to not be climbing as much, but it felt good to be learning again with something that I had almost forgotten about. So just a little thought that whitewater kayaking was also going to affect who I was hanging out with in life as well. You can have the floor back.
Good point. Okay, so yeah, this is now September of 99. I'm still dating Wade, and I'm like, this is going nowhere, and I've got no interest in him, and I'm still thinking of Rob. And so I was debating breaking up with him, and I was having a hard time with that because I don't like to hurt people. So I was like, I don't know how to do this. But I was really thinking, I got it, because I'm not interested in this man. So my angels decide they need to talk to me, and I, at this point, have not channeled angels since I was evicted and all of that had gone down. I was done with all the angel stuff. So I wasn't channeling, but they insisted they really needed to talk, and this is what they said. Dear one, we feel your resistance in allowing us to come through. Yeah, because I'm like, I don't want to hear from you people. Breathe deep and go with the flow. We have some to say and would not disturb you were it not important. In matters of Wade, it is not yet time to release him. There is still some growth for the both of you, some matters yet left undone that must be completed. The days are not long until the release will occur on its own naturally. So, interesting. Here I am wanting desperately to break up with this man, and my angels are saying, no, don't. You have work to do together. Really? So even my angels are telling me that, no, you can't break up with him yet. Which I found really kind of funny. All right, and then we're in July of 2000. And I said, I feel so sad and disappointed. It's like I imagined this specific life for myself. But it's only been a dream and not a reality. I want a man who doesn't want to get out of bed with me in the morning and wants to hold me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have my dream that's a reality now, but back then it wasn't.
It is. We got up very late this morning. I just didn't want to get up.
Like typical Sunday morning.
Way too comfy, and only a snuggling point of view now.
Is that reality or just a stupid fairy tale dream? Does it exist, or am I wishful thinking and getting too many ideas from TV? So I had this dream my whole life of this fairy tale, this magical love, and now that I'm still with Wade, even though I'd wanted to break up with him, I'm like, okay, maybe there is no fairy tale dream. Maybe this whole thing with Rob isn't real. Maybe it's not going to happen. And maybe I need to just give up on this stupid dream of a great love that I've always had. So I was really starting to question what was real and what wasn't. Was I just supposed to stay in a mediocre relationship, or was this magic love that I experienced something that I could actually have? So then I'm saying, I wish I could combine Wade and Robert, the fun and comfort and spontaneity of Wade and the chemistry and magic of Robert. In other words, I was still frustrated with Rob because he was so serious back then and so intense. And I was like, I want the fun that I had with Wade, because we did. We had a lot of fun. He was able to just play. Of course, he didn't take a lot of seriousness in life. So we had great fun. But of course, then we also didn't have the magic and the chemistry that Rob and I had. So I was like, I wish I could just put them together. I'd have the perfect man. So I said, I miss how Rob would hold me at night so tightly and say, I wish I could unzip myself and tuck you in, and how he would hold me tight. But yet I hated and still hate his intensity, his need to always be in his head. That's what I love about Wade. He can be spontaneous, and I feel so comfortable with him. I don't feel like I have to prove anything. So again, the struggle of, one man has some things that I love, but the other man is the one that I actually truly love and have the chemistry with. So this pull, this confusion of, what do I do with these two people? Kind of confusing. So of course, in between all of this Wade stuff, there was some Rob stuff too, which we'll share in the next video. So I did end up breaking up with Wade because it just, every day I was thinking more about Rob than I was of him. I mean, literally, and this is maybe not the greatest thing to say, but I'd be lying in his arms at night thinking of you. Mm. And the only way I could go to sleep was to imagine that it was his arms around me. Oh. I know.
That's going to be terribly confusing.
I felt like a horrible person.
Well, let me know when you make it to the summer of 2000-ish.
Oh, well, this next part is December of 2000. So do you want to go?
Yeah, I better throw in a quick footnote about the summer of 2000. Now we'd gone over a winter, and it was now next summer, and I was in my second year of kayaking. But I needed to learn how to do kayaking better. I had not got anywhere trying to teach myself how to do the Eskimo roll. So when a river would flip me upside down, I'd have to bail out of my kayak, and the kayak and I would have to swim over to shore and put ourselves back together and continue on down the river. Earlier on in the summer of 2000, I took a learn how to roll your kayak course. Like learn how to do the Eskimo roll, because I trash a video. And it was in that class that I met Karmic 2. Karmic 2 was the lady who I would eventually spend 12 years with.
Yeah.
But that was only just the time that we met. It wasn't the time we started to get together, and there's a little bit more time yet. So it's back to Angie.
And then there was still time with you and I in between all of that.
No, I had just met her. She was just a classmate, and then turned into a kayaking buddy as we went out to practice things with a few of the other people from the class as well. We had a little group of us that went out. So, yes, that's a good point. Okay, so then now I'm in December of 2000 in my journals. And I'm talking about I've now met another, what a coincidence, Rob. This is now Rob number 3. If you're confused, so am I. It's all good. All I remember is I'm Rob number 2, so I'm fine.
We'll explain in a bit the lessons that there was from all these Robs. So I was on a dating site, and that's how I met this guy. So I said, we met at Chapters last night at 8:30 and closed the place down at 11. Then we went to his place and talked till 2. I really like him and feel comfortable and natural with him. So just felt an instant connection with him, and we just really enjoyed each other. This is now January 3rd, so just a couple days, not even a week later.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. Of 2001, of course. I said, I talked with the new Rob. I like that. I called him the new Rob. I didn't label him as Rob number 3 yet.
Old Rob. New Rob.
I didn't know how long he was going to be around, so I wasn't sure if I was giving him a number or not.
I'm not sure if you developed the number system quite yet.
I think I had at some point. So I said I talked with the new Rob on the phone tonight. He mailed me this morning with a note of how much he enjoyed last night, but how when we are not together, he gets all commitment phobic. So this poor man, again, I think he was 10 or maybe a little bit years older than me. I always attracted naturally men that were at least 10 years older than me. So he'd been married and divorced before, and very gentle, sensitive person, and he had a lot of fears from getting into relationships. He was very afraid because he'd been hurt so bad. So with him and I, it was kind of on again, off again for a while, which I'm going to explain next. I said, well, I have come to a decision. I will not chase this new Rob. I will not feed his fear, nor will I keep asking to see him, only to get excuse after excuse. I've worked too hard on myself and wasted too much time chasing Robs. I will do it no more. So we unfortunately didn't last long, only because he wasn't ready. He just had so much fear of relationships that he just couldn't. He actually broke up with me over email because he was like, I can't even see you in person because I'm too scared.
You know,
fair enough, dude.
Breaking up over email in 2001, that's pretty advanced back then. People hadn't really thought of doing that yet, as much as it might be somewhat commonplace, even though still very tacky nowadays. That was very new.
Yeah, number 3. Super nice guy, and I'll explain a little bit more about him after we talk about the next guy. So now we're on to the next guy. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I was on a dating site, so I was just exploring life, right? All right, now we get another one. I said, okay, I had a feeling something would happen today. Thought it would be an email from Rob, and then I put in brackets, just recently when I was, reading through this. This is number 3. Not this Rob, not number 1. So I had to start numbering them.
This is where it started.
Yes. So thought it would be an email from Rob number 3 or something, which I guess was not too far off. I checked my mail when I got home from work. Starlight Walks, what a nice name, in Web Personal emailed me. 40-year-old Taurus, non-religious engineer. I read his mail in which he wrote that he liked my ad and felt we had lots in common, and said he enjoys space and time alone as well, has been in Calgary for a year, and then he signed off with Rob.
Oh. This would be Rob number 4.
Yes, which we're going to read about in a minute. He's funny. So I said, what a surprise. Not, I guess. I'm in shock, yet not. Think the universe is trying to tell me something? It was starting to get amusing, all these Robs. No, it's not like I was going looking for them. I mean, he emailed me. I didn't see his ad. I didn't know his name. So, funny.
I'm sitting here feeling so insignificant because I've put myself kind of back in that time frame, and I'm just a blip of Rob, of somewhere in her life.
In between the other Robs, yeah. Yeah.
I get done this video, I'm going to have to go look in the mirror and breathe and realize I really am me and not one of these other characters.
You're the one I'm with.
Oh.
They were all great teachers in the meantime. Yeah. So I said I got home at 9 p.m. to a message from the new Rob. This is Rob number 4. I had to keep defining them as the new Rob. His message was funny and made me feel more solid in my feelings of liking him. He said, hi, I guess this would be Rob number 4. So he numbered himself, which was very funny. I love that he even has a sense of humor. So he totally did. Now, this Rob and I connected. If I personally don't like the definitions of, soulmate, karmic partner, and near twin, and all the other, like, I can't think of right now, because they're all just really soulmates from the other side, and I'll get into that later. But if I had to define this man according to the definitions that are, kind of floating out around there right now about all of these different relationships that we have, he would be a soulmate. We clicked instantly. We moved in together very quickly because we were so similar. It was like how he described it even was that we were cut from the same cloth, that expression. We just fit together. So I even wrote, it's bizarre how similar this man and I are. We think totally the same neuroses and the analness. It's totally weird. I can remember on our first date, he asked me, it was like an interview, which I was good with because that's how I dated. He said, what is your biggest fault? And I said, I'm very anal. I like everything very detailed. I like my towels 3-way folded, and I'm very particular about how I live. And he's like, I don't see that as a problem at all. I'm the same way. I'm like, great, we'll get along well. So just everything about us was just, it clicked so well. And remember I said I lost a tab?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured out where I lost it. Really too bad. Oh, maybe not. Okay.
The found tab.
Yes. So as I mentioned, this Rob number 4, and I moved in together very quickly. We had already set a wedding date. We were very seriously connected, planning on spending our lives together. The day I officially moved in with him, we'd been living together for months, but the day I officially moved in with him, this is what happened. Rob sprung some major news on me this morning. He does not think we will work out, so he thinks we should separate. That means I've just moved out of one apartment only to now have to find another. I'm so everything and everywhere feelings-wise. I just finally unpacked and mixed our things together, and now I have to go and separate everything and find a place to live again? Fine, I can't do this, nor will I argue. This is the 4th breakup I've had with the 4th Rob. The 4th time a Rob has dumped me. So I'm like, I am so done. I am done with Robs. You all, sorry, go to hell. So then I said, well, another Rob, another runner. How do I find them? Is my only lesson to let go and not chase? Have I worked past it now? Can I now move on past running Robs? Don't know, not sure. I guess all I can do is look at my own stuff and allow others to do as they see fit. I will grieve, I will cry, and I will move on. So be it. So I was even asking way back then, I mean, clearly I'm starting to get the message here. 4 Robs, and all of them have been the one to break up with me. So I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a message in this. What is the lesson? And yes, one of the lessons was to stop chasing. Rob number 7, or Rob number...
Rob number 7.
Yeah, there was no Rob number 7. Let's not confuse that. Only 4. Rob number 1, I chased for 7 years. Rob number 2 was years.
Couple of years in there, 2.5,
yes.
Almost 3 years.
Rob number 3 was only weeks, and Rob number 4 was not at all. Rob number 4, I still had to get the rest of my stuff out of my apartment the day that I was officially moving in with him. Even though he broke up with me, I had nowhere else to go. So I lived with him until I found another place. Thank God we were very amicable and friendly. But as we were driving to my apartment to pick up the big stuff, furniture and stuff, he said to me, I'm surprised you're not trying to convince me that we should be together still. And I said, no, if you don't think we should be together, then we shouldn't be. I'm not convincing anybody. I want somebody who wants to be with me, not somebody I have to convince. So, 4th Rob, I finally got the lesson. If somebody doesn't want to be with you, don't be with them. Plain and simple. That was lesson number 1. The other lesson was, and this is quite fascinating when you think about it, the whole lesson was to stop robbing myself of myself. I was very good at giving up myself. I was very codependent back then. For example, Rob number 4 had a lot of things he didn't like about me that he wanted me to change. How I wore my hair. The fact that he hated nail polish. I love wearing nail polish. He didn't like my one tattoo and didn't want me getting any more. My tattoos are all small, and they're all important to me. But all of these things, he was trying to control who I was and say who I should and shouldn't be and how I should live my life. And I gave in to it all. Lesson, stop robbing myself of myself. Stop giving up myself for other people. Hard way to learn, to have your heart broken 4 times by 4 men with all the same name. But some of us need to learn by hard knocks, and sadly I'm one of them. So out of all of this, I got Wade coming back in my life. Oddly enough, I broke up with that man 5 times in total. He would come back, we would date for a while, and then I would just go, what am I doing? I mean, just to give you an example, and not that he was wrong or that I was wrong, we were just different people. my greatest value, one of my greatest values, is health. Well, his not. I would wake up in the morning. My morning routine was have a drink of water, go work out. His morning routine was have a cigarette and a coffee. We just weren't compatible in so many ways. I like to go to the mountains and climb and hike and do things. Certainly not at the intensity level my dear Rob number 2 liked back then. But Wade's idea of a fun day was to have a marathon day on the couch of 4 movies. I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do that. So we broke up a lot. But then when I finally surrendered was 2 things, all these Robs. I was finally like, okay, I had the same magic similar magic with all of them, a comfortableness, a familiarity, the soulmate kind of feeling with all of them where we really fit, and it didn't work out. And I also looked at their personalities. They were all either engineers. Rob number 3 and Rob number 4 were actual engineers. Rob number 1 is not an engineer, but works in a very engineering type job. And you, even though you're not an engineer, I call him Mr. Engineer all the time because he's got an engineering brain. So there were very similar personalities too. So I finally started realizing that, maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. Maybe all these men that I love are not who I'm supposed to be with. So I was warming up to the idea of Wade some more and surrendering to, okay, maybe this is it for me. What finally threw me over the edge was this experience that I had in June of 2004. I had done what's called a life between lives regression. So it's not a past life regression. You don't go to your previous life. You actually go to back to spirit world and find out what happens in between lives. And I had an amazing regression, learned so much from it. But one of the little things that I want to explain that I got from that was meeting my dear soul friends. One of them, of course, was my love. And he told me in that regression, I'll actually read it from what I had said. I said, he apologized for us not staying together in this life, saying it wasn't meant as a lifelong commitment. He was sorry if he had caused me any hurt. So in between all of these other men, the Wade, the Robs, I was still seeing Rob. We were still having our sleepovers, our connection times, our still love each other moments. And finally, after this experience, I accepted that it wasn't meant to be. I finally let go of that dream, that fairy tale of this magical life, and surrendered to Wade. He kept saying, why can't you see that after all these men are gone, I'm the one that's still here. I keep helping you pick up the pieces of your broken hearts. So be with me. So I finally surrendered and thought, okay, being with somebody that you're comfortable with is more important than being with somebody that you have a magical connection with. And I married him in June of 2005. And shortly after that, we felt this really strong call to move to another province. So then I was, saying goodbye to all of my Calgary friends, which you were one of. I met him, and we'll talk about that next video.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we moved to another province, and it took me a couple years. I really struggled finding a job, and finally found one that I loved. I was passionate about this job. It so fit everything that I am and everything that I love to do. It was administrative, it was nursing, it was spiritual. It was really helping people with light and sound technology, learn how to work through things like quitting smoking, de-stressing, anxiety, losing weight, being a better performance person, all sorts of different things. So I was hired at this job in August of 2007, and the boss could already see that I was excelling by December of 2007. And wouldn't you know, this is where synchronicity is magical. He was creating another one of these centers in Calgary, of all places.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I would come help him train the new staff in Calgary So in December of 2007, I got to go back to my old city, which I miss. I hated the new place that Wade and I had moved to and just yearned for my city back. So it was amazing to get to go back and see my city. And while I was there for a couple of weeks training and, got this new job training other staff, I connected with some of the friends that I had left, and I called you.
Yeah.
We had not communicated, by the way.
That whole time she was gone.
Yeah, I moved in probably, I think, October of 2005 and didn't reconnect with him until December.
So we had only had a couple of contacts over the span of 3 years plus. Yeah, so we were...
Not even, because we had no contact while I was gone.
Yeah, lots of time went by.
Yeah. And by this time, you were with Karmic number 2.
I was with Karmic 2.
Which we'll let you get into in a bit.
Yeah.
So we'll share next video what my boss, of course, got to meet him because my boss was the one that dropped me off because I didn't have a vehicle. And very fascinating what my boss had to say about Rob. So then it works out that my boss and I end up together as a couple.
Life is strange.
Life is strange. It wasn't at all what you'd think in terms of, the boss and the employee. We had a very deep soul connection. If I were to define this man, I couldn't just put him into one category of being a soulmate. He was a soulmate. He was a karmic partner. He could be classed as a false twin or a near twin, as some people like to call it. I remember actually when I was really deciding to get involved in this relationship. Of course, by this time, my marriage was falling apart because there was really just no connection. There was no soul connection, and I missed having a soul bond with somebody. So when we got together, I was really thinking of our relationship, and because I had had nothing that close to our relationship before. And I had to really decide, do I want to go down this road again? Do I want to be disconnected with somebody and feel this heartbroken if it doesn't work out? Soul chose over mind, and I ended up in this relationship. So we ended up moving back to Calgary to work at the Calgary Center that he had opened. And from 2009 until Rob and I got back together, this was the man that was the relationship that I was in. First of all, before I get into that one, let me talk a little bit about the lessons from Wade. There was a purpose for Wade, as my angels had told me. With him, huge lesson in learning not to save and rescue people. Classic nurse I was. I thought I could rescue and save people. I thought I could help him find health and, stop smoking, stop drinking. He had tremendous money issues. I helped him get completely out of debt. The minute we broke up, he was right back into debt again. So it made me realize you can fix, you can save, you can rescue nobody but yourself. And it's your responsibility to fix, save, and nobody but yourself. So that was one lesson. There was another one, and I can't remember. I have to look at my notes.
It's interesting. Angie has journals. There's little
notes.
scraps of paper. Sometimes there's books. She's actually written on the cardboard backing of a tear-off notepad. She ran out of paper, so now it's just everything's just written on the cardboard
I have more
portion.
paper, but I don't like to waste anything. So
that's also very true.
Yeah. So the other thing was balance. He was so good for me because, as you remember from Rob's and my last video, we were talking about how one of us was here and the other was like way over here. Wade was really good at helping me learn to balance myself because him and I were very extreme in our own ways. So I learned a great deal of balance from him. Huge learning. The other thing, which I'll get into later, was we had karma together from past life, or a past life, that I didn't know about it until later. I found out later years that him and I were married in a previous life, and the new guy, the boss, that I ended up in a relationship with, was my son in that life, and Wade in that life was so jealous of the love that we had that he ended up killing us. He murdered us because he was envious that I loved my child more than I loved him. So not surprising that my marriage ended up really breaking up because of this new man that was my boss, because of the karma that we had from previous lifetime. Fascinating stuff that your mind may not know of when you get involved with people, that's why you're involved with them, is to clear karma. And for me, it was very true.
It's fascinating listening to people talk about the soul groups that they come through and come from. You go up, as a soul group, you mix and match and shake up your roles and come back as one time you're just friends, other times you're family members, sometimes you're parent, child, or grandparent, grandchild.
Yep.
It shuffles the deck almost every time, and it just works cycle after cycle, and you get to play a lot of the different roles until you finally have grown enough through the different experiences that each style of relationship has that your completeness becomes more complete. Very interesting.
And that's such a good point, because one of the things I wanted to bring up was that this new man, I keep calling him my boss, I'll give him a name, I'll call him Regan. Gonna have to remember that one, Regan. We discovered, not even through, past life regressions that we went to see somebody else, just we started having flashes of previous lives together. We remembered being husband and wife in a previous life. We remembered being mother and son, which is the life that we were murdered by his dad, my husband, in that life. And we also remember being brother and sister. So yes, we very much remembered past lives together and past experiences together. And here we were again, releasing karma and clearing karma from previous lives. So I had tremendous learnings with this man, and I feel so grateful for my time with him. It was 6 years. It was very enjoyable, but very hard at the same time. One of his previous employees had told me once that when things were good with him, they were really good, and when things were bad with him, they were really bad. And that's exactly how I experienced it.
Hot, cold?
Very. I mean, we laughed till we cried sometimes. But then I also cried more than I've ever cried in my life with this man. A lot of hard times. We struggled a lot. But so much learning. I learned, he was a very strong personality, and of course, because I grew up in an abusive home, I was very mousy. So I would be very passive-aggressive with him. So I had to learn to find my voice, speak up. I used to get sick a lot with sore throats and cold sores because all throat chakra, all learning to speak my truth. So it took me years to learn that, but part of my learning. Also learned some karma with one of his children that came to live with us that I struggled greatly with. Didn't understand why I had so much problem with this kid until I found out we had a past life together. So I had to clear that issue. Also learned through that relationship that I was empathic and that I was highly sensitive. So much learning came out of that relationship. Huge amounts of growth. Tremendous challenge, yes. But your greatest soulmates are the ones that are going to be your greatest challenges oftentimes. Because they commit from soul life before you come to earth. They're the ones that commit with you that, yes, I agree to help you through your challenging times. I agree to be the bad one sometimes, and you can agree to do that for me. We did it for each other, and it was really, really challenging, but such a blessing. Can't reiterate that anymore. If that doesn't make sense to you, I would recommend Googling The Little Soul in the Sun by Neil Donald Walsh. It explains things so well, how we come together as soul friends and the work we agree to do. Brilliant. I could go on and on about lessons that I've learned from that. The only other one I wanted to say, though, just reading my notes, is it was this man that also helped me realize some of the things that I had done to Rob and didn't even know I did. One time he finally got mad at me and he yelled and he said, "Stop doing this. You have this way of going, come here, go away, go away." In other words, I would pull him close and then I'd get freaked out by the intimacy and the connection and I'd push him away and get mean. When he finally pointed that out, I realized, holy crap, I've done this before. And I did this with Rob. So I actually bought Rob a thank you card because, of course, we still had contact here and there, not much.
Not much.
No.
Right. We were truly in the Christmas birthday and missing the odd one of those along the way too. So once a year maximum, to my memory. Journals may say otherwise. We'll find
No,
out.
it was probably, if not more time
Yeah.
between us. Yeah. But yeah, I bought a thank you card, and it took me over a year to give it to him because I didn't have the guts to. But I realized that I had done the same thing to him. So this man had helped me grow so much, and without either of us knowing consciously, he prepared me huge for Rob. Rob and I would not be together were it not for that man or somebody else, maybe like him, that would have taught me the lessons that I needed to learn and how to grow in the ways I needed to grow in order for us to come back together. So I have the deepest gratitude for that man. All of my soulmates and karmic partners, but especially him, because we did a lot of work together. A lot of work. So that's my long, long story, and I tried to keep it very brief.
Well, that's okay too. I got the comment lots. This was very interesting. I learned a couple of things through all this. So we're at 50 minutes. Do we want to continue on?
Well, that's up to you. If you want to share yours.
I'm going to do this. I think this is important to put together both in the same video.
I'm sorry that I took long, but
yeah, our lack of rehearsal sometimes leaves us with an unknown closing time. And some of you have mentioned that sometimes that you wish we would go a little bit longer, and we haven't had a whole lot of people say that they wish we'd go a little bit shorter. So we'll err on the side of going a little bit longer this time.
Yes.
I have a couple of very small print pages to talk about, and I'm going to talk about my karmics or friends that I've had that are very spiritual based, because from the point of view of each one of them tended to prepare me for either a greater next step in my spiritual growth, or they would prepare me for the next partner or karmic partner that would then introduce a new spiritual growth. So when I went to write about my people, it looked like stepping stones of advancement somewhere in my life for some reason. So I was also writing about these people and remembering very fondly, all of them I remembered very fondly, even though sometimes there was rocky times, it always seems to be. But I was feeling very, very grateful. So sometimes I've written some grateful comments in with just the footnotes that I have. My overview is that I've almost always had a knack for finding spiritual individuals. Seldom have these individuals been focused on spirituality from a religious point of view, although usually they had some strong roots still with organized religion. They respected their backgrounds, which is always important to do. They respected their backgrounds, but they were at a growth point and experimentation with spirituality that required individual realizations, and therefore they were not in a religious time of their lives. They were very much singular. I'm going to start with a friend that I met back even before I left Edmonton. I was just going through my divorce at that time from my first marriage. My close friend, Brenda, who I'm still in contact with, was my first spiritualist that came into my life. She showed up during my first divorce, and we immediately chose the friendship route, and therefore we avoided the emotional cloudiness that comes with the more traditionally intimate relationships. She took a bit of time to truly open up on her spiritual perspectives, and I was so new to these perspectives that I think that she was afraid of freaking me out. Lots of people have been afraid of that along the way.
Yes, we have.
I've always been just well enough prepared to accept whatever next step has come at me. She is a gifted intuitive healer, and she loves her crystals. She loves crystals.
She's got lots of them.
She's a very strong personality, which I put in brackets, tends to keep the riffraff away. And her laugh is dominant and recognizable, even in crowded and noisy locations. She was my spiritual big sister, and no BS gets by her. I can't get anything by her. She always calls me on it. As much as I am an only child, she has the role of big sister in all aspects of my life. Little did I know that her earlier on insistence to grow from the inside out and see others from who they are on the inside would mirror Angie's mantra of go within when looking for spiritual answers. She introduced me to the go within concept. And when Angie became very much a go within person, I recognized it. I had already had a chance to settle down with that, therefore I had a chance to accept it. And this is very common as I go from person to person, the lessons that were learned. My angel number 1, I'll call her. I had 3 angels in my life. Angel number 3, I'm actually not going to talk about. Angie is my angel number 2. Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't ever clue into that before either. Aw, we're each other's number 2.
Angie? Nope, sorry, excuse me. Freudian slip. Angel number 1. I met her when I was fairly new to Calgary, roughly early 1996, and just over a year before I met Angie. Angel number 1 was intensely physically beautiful. She'd done some modeling. She was an intensely physically beautiful lady with 3 fairly young children, and she was freshly divorced for the second time, whereas I was freshly divorced for the first time. It surprised me when she almost immediately questioned me about my spiritual background. I was still a bit shy and overwhelmed / insecure about her physical presence, so it was a relief to find an early common denominator in spiritual matters. She said she could see bright white flashes of light in my aura, and she was curious if I knew anything about the signs of spiritual connection that happens through one's aura. I was about to get schooled in auras and other lessons to do with light beings and their auras. Our relationship only lasted a few short months, but she has a connection with spirit that was just outside of the 3D realm, which was about all I could handle at that time. Her talk about how all living entities, and yes, even Mother Earth, had energy fields and how those energy fields exist and can be felt or seen, opened the door to the understanding that I could somehow learn how to do that someday. I would eventually recognize Angie's abilities to see auras through the lessons I had heard and had experienced with angel number 1.
Thank you, angel number 1. You made me look a little less crazy in his eyes.
I've got a name of Betty written down. Betty was my older lady of my karmic teachers. I was in my mid-30s and she was in her early 50s. We were introduced through a common friend and we had an instant connection on all levels. She was an LPN, that stands for Licensed Practical Nurse.
I attracted engineers, you attracted nurses.
She loved hiking and had a healthy respect for native Indian spiritual practices. She would often refer to a sacred native area on Earth here, known as Dream Quest, and she had been on group retreats to this area many times. She was very conscious of our age difference, and I myself slowly drifted out of that relationship, but not before my prejudices, maybe I had a few, about age differences had been vastly lowered, and my openness to native spiritual practices had been created, and I had started to develop just a little bit of a curiosity about them. This was to be very important, as my 12-year karmic relationship with Karmic 2, who I'll talk about in a little while, had an unusually large age gap, and she was also just starting into native spiritual understandings as we were growing into our relationship. So Betty had 2 important stepping stones that I needed to go through before I would be able to accept one of the next people in my life. Along came Karmic 1. Now, I can't really say along came Karmic 1 because Karmic 1 was one of the first people I really connected with when I first moved to Calgary. Karmic 1 was an RNA, Registered Nursing Assistant. Another nurse.
Our lives are crazy.
It just doesn't end, okay? It
like
doesn't.
Say, you can't make this stuff up.
You can't. I met her about a year after moving to Calgary. This would have been 1995-ish. And she would become the girl that I would go back to after any other relationships had failed, or in some cases were starting to fail.
Yep.
I wrote bad, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Karmic number 1, if you remember, has been
in and out.
Story.
Yeah. She was a great example of a chameleon. She would adapt to any style of person that she was in contact with, being easy to get along with. Others would fail to see that she had no real solid core of understanding of who she was, and therefore was a little unable to define herself. She was more religious than I preferred, but she also connected well with God's gift of nature and mountains. She was also a single mom to a sweet little girl that I would eventually develop a close stepdad-daughter relationship with. This relationship, along with my more distant connection with Angel number one's 3 sons, would ultimately help me adapt to Karmic number 2 and her young son when it came time for Karmic number 2 to enter my life. Stepping stones. I'll say it over and over and over again.
Yep.
Karmic number 2 is a whole chapter of a book all on her own, is how I put it. I have little paragraphs here, and it was very hard to condense Karmic number 2 into just a couple of paragraphs.
Well, especially because it was a 12-year relationship.
12-year relationship.
And that's a full-on committed marriage-type relationship.
Moved in, bought her own place together.
Yeah.
I met Karmic number 2 while taking a Learn How to Eskimo Roll Kayak course, as I mentioned earlier. She was a gregarious person and a natural leader. We started out as whitewater kayaking buddies within a larger group, but we soon grew into strong participants within that group, and I put in brackets leaders, although we weren't the absolute leaders. We were still very, very involved. My respect for her continued to grow throughout the year, and it was very sad when winter ended the season of kayaking, and we would stop seeing each other for almost every week like we had. We picked up where we left off next spring, and by late summer, we were dating. Mm-hmm. By midwinter, we were engaged. Being both divorced, we were in no rush to get married immediately, and we never actually did get married. 12-year relationship, common law. We lasted 12 years. 12 years that I cherished far more than I regretted. I owe a huge chunk of who I am, both spiritually and as a personality, to the growth that happened in that relationship. I am eternally thankful to Karmic number 2 and all the changes that we went through. The day I left that relationship, I completely hurt her trust in humanity immeasurably. She had no idea that it was coming, not even to the last second. That day was one of the most darkest days of my life, and I have made a terrible mess of this departure from her life. Getting more into just who Karmic 2 was, I wrote, here we go again. By profession, she was retired from being an X-ray technician, another medical person,
Yep.
and had become a bookkeeper. Here we are, a parallel, complete parallel again.
Yep.
Medical person again, and just like Angie, a bookkeeping convert. But I did not know that Angie was converting to anything to do with bookkeeping.
No, because we weren't much in touch at that point.
At the
all.
time, because we were out of touch. I didn't know really what Angie was doing.
No.
Karmic number 2 was leaving the realm of organized religion when we first met. She was seeing a different path that was soul-based and required much intuitive work. She is very talented in understanding concepts and learning how to practice them intuitively, connecting them with healing and through spirituality, and just using intuitive modalities was her forte. She practiced Reiki and body talk. She was really good at cranial sacral therapy, and through that, she practiced that in her house, and our house basically turned into a spiritually expressive mausoleum of figurines, banners, and all sorts of descriptions. Charts of chakras and various other energy descriptions became a daily part of my life. She eventually took a strong interest in Native Indian ways. I wrote, see Betty. I helped find remote sites to hang prayer flags. And, of course, you hang prayer flags and then you go out, you got to find them later, usually a month later or even longer. So I would go out and help her find sites to hang prayer flags after they had gone through their initiation. And then a month later, in many cases, it was my job to go back and find these just remote trails through the bush on the edge of the mountains to find them again so we could take them back down and bring them back home. By then, I was much more developed in my own spiritual awareness and far more adaptable to the new concepts that were coming at me through Karmic number 2 than I was a decade earlier. We had taken 3 trips to different cultures within Europe, and I had visited ancient cities, both active and abandoned. The energies of generations gone by and millenniums gone by in these old cultural areas within Europe was amazing to feel. And either by excavation or restoration, the city of Ephesus in Turkey felt disturbingly homey to me. I felt like somewhere in the past I had been there before. I felt a recognition to the area. Through this time, Karmic number 2, I had grown enough to recognize these energies and to start to trust my deepest intuitions. My karmics and my other spiritual friends all seemed to come to me as stepping stones, either for new spiritual growth or my next level of karmic partners as far as what challenges they would have. As example, preparing myself to have children in my life. Every person was important to my growth, and I needed them all in their time to prepare for my eventual reunion with Angie. I loved them all, for better or for worse. Highly unlikely to happen on this earth. I hope that all my karmics and spiritual friends can be together as one, as souls, eventually on the other side.
And you will.
Undoubtedly. These would all be people who had agreed before we came to this earth that we would teach each other various things. They learned from me, I learned from them, and it's important to have that. There's all sorts of names in there, all sorts of experiences, and this is all sprinkled and intertwined with times when Angie and I were in contact with each other. And some people worry in their relationships with their twin about a relationship coming along. Both of us had numerous relationships while we were slowly developing and becoming more adapted and more educated on how we could come back together finally, permanently, like we are now. I owe a lot to my karmics.
Huge. Both of us. And as you can see from our own story, it doesn't matter if you have other relationships than your twin. It doesn't matter if you marry somebody else or your twin marries somebody else. It doesn't matter if you move far away from each other. None of it matters, because what really matters is you are connected, and you are always going to be connected, whether you're together physically for a time or not. And if you are meant to be back together, nothing can stop you from coming back together. The universe will conspire. I mean, how synchronistic that I move away and it ends up that the job that I'm in brings me back to the city that my twin is in.
But in the meanwhile, I've started a 12-year relationship, which means there's nothing more than just being in contact once in what would be called once in a blue moon. But it takes years and years to come back together.
And your relationship necessarily doesn't have to be years and years, because as we've said before, things are speeding up energetically. People now, because more and more people understand the whole twin flame dynamic, they're getting the lessons faster. A relationship with a karmic, a soulmate, a whoever, doesn't need to take 12 years anymore. It can take however long it needs to get the lesson and move on.
Yeah.
So
I actually hope that people don't have to wait 20 years to finally settle down with their twins, but still, there seems to be a time process that most people are saying that still needs to be gone through. It's hopefully not as long.
Because we all have those damn lessons to learn.
We still have not got to a point in our story where we talk about understanding what twin flames are, or even the concept of twin flames. That is going to be for next video.
Actually, might be the next
maybe.
one. Yeah. That if not the next one, it'll be the one after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
So the last point I wanted to make is for those of you that are like, no, absolutely, I'm not going to see anybody else while I'm in separation from my twin. That's fine. There's no rule saying you have to be with a karmic partner or a soulmate or somebody else. But if you feel somebody's coming into your life, I just had a woman message me the other day and said, my twin is with somebody else. And I have this new person coming into my life, and I don't know what to do with them. She's like, I can't wait to hear what your next video, how you talk about things in your next video. Go with what feels right in this. Why, again, I say all the time, go within. What feels good to you? If it feels like this person's got a message for you, a blessing for you, a lesson for you, then go be with them. It doesn't mean you're betraying your twin. Your twin will always be your twin, no matter if you're with somebody else or not. I understand the feeling of feeling like you're betraying them. As I've read in my journal, I felt that very much so. But sometimes we need to have these other people to help us grow, to help us release old karma, whatever the lesson is that we need. So embrace them if it feels right for you. And if it doesn't, well, then honor that too. Everybody's path is different, and we're not saying just because we've had multiple relationships between each other that you have to. That's our path. But we're also saying that don't be afraid of other people. Don't go, oh my God, no, I can't do that. Because there's so many blessings in it. There's so many. I mean, as we keep sharing, we would not be together were it not for these other people in our lives.
Trust your intuition.
Yes.
And even if your intuition is to just go out for a date and then never see them again, then trust that. Very much.
Yes, so thank you for hanging in there with us for our longer than normal video. And next video we'll talk about how Rob and I connect through all this same time period of like up to 2010, 11, whatever it ends up being.
Yes.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you, and we'll say goodbye.
Have a good week.
Yes, and remember as always, connect with your twin to go within.